Greetings and welcome to another edition of AUHSD Future Talks. I'm your host, Michael Matsuda, Superintendent of the Anaheim Union High School District. And as our 8,000 or so podcast listeners know, this show is all about education and the future of education for our Gen Z listeners out there. And today's guest is Christian Pinedo, Chief of Staff at aiEDU. Christian, welcome to our little show.
Hi, Mike, and thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to see you and the AUHSD team.
So we always start with who you are, Christian. I know you're a former teacher, classroom teacher, specializing in STEM. You travel the country all over now. You have one of the coolest jobs, I think, in the United States because you connect with some amazing educators and most recently at the Stanford Institute for human-centered AI. But before we get there, tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and how you ended up at this just amazing job at aiEDU.
Sure. I mean, I grew up in Southern California. I grew up largely in like the Orange County area and very close actually where Anaheim Union is. I went to school basically just like really finding high value in education. Like many immigrant families, a lot of people saw the U.S. as an opportunity to really just take advantage of the amazing free education programs that were here. My family's from Peru, so I brought a lot of my culture into the way I saw education, and I went into college wanting to be a teacher. Taught for my first few years in Southeast San Diego, like 20 minutes just north of the Mexican border. And so a lot of my students were from like really harsh backgrounds. And I was able to do whatever I could in order to support those students. And I saw myself in like wanting to build opportunities for students who maybe didn't see themselves as four-year university track students, who maybe wanted to see other ways to get into the workforce and have really solid jobs out of high school. And so got really interested in like CTE program development and certification pathways, and was really like leaning into this question about like, what does it truly mean to prepare students for their futures? What kinds of skills are important? What kinds of values are important? Beyond just pushing them into a four-year university, what are those really core things that students should have to be prepared? And it was in this like exploratory mindset that I like found AI as like the next thing that was going to change work. It was going to change what it meant to actually be an effective workforce member, be an effective student, be an effective lifelong learner. And I really just leaned into it. So yeah, as you mentioned, went to work at the Institute for Human-Centered AI. I'm not a technologist. I've never studied computer science, but I was really interested in this like ethical approach to technology. This idea that technology and AI in particular should be human-centered in its design and in its implications or application in the real world. And so did a lot of work there and learned a lot as well. And then it was a year and a month ago, in November 2022 is when ChatGPT was released. And that's when I realized that like schools needed much more hands-on support. Stanford is a really cool place to think and postulate and research, but it wasn't a very good place to do. And like you mentioned, like now the job that I have is really focused on traveling the country, engaging directly with educators all over the country, building support systems and helping them understand like what it actually means to support AI literacy for students and build those skills among students that'll prepare them for an AI-powered reality.
So what is the purpose of aiEDU?
Yeah, I mean, it's rooted in what I was talking, like this idea that AI literacy is that foundation. AI literacy is something that schools, educators, students, parents need to understand as something that is going to transform a student's ability to thrive in an AI-powered world. As AI is obviously being implemented across different places. It's not just something that computer scientists are engaging with now. It's something that artists, people studying history, people studying biology are all engaging with AI. And so this isn't something that should just be talked about in computer science classes, but should be talked about across the board. And it shouldn't be talked about from a technological perspective, but more so from an impact perspective. Like, what is this technology actually doing? How are we making sure we leverage technology to augment human ability without necessarily replacing human value? This is something that I know educators are really interested in. Like this idea of how it's going to transform the workforce is something that that love to build amongst communities of schools, of teachers, of students. And so aiEDU does a lot of that by building curricula that teachers can use in the classroom, actually guiding teachers into what kinds of conversations they could facilitate. We do a lot of teacher upskilling and teacher professional development. And then we also just like look across the system at like policy frameworks, building out best practices for what schools and school districts should be doing in order to best support their teachers and their students.
Yeah, I know that you and Alex Cotran, the founder, have built quite an organization very quickly in terms of your network across the country. And I would encourage our listeners to go to the aiEDU website and access that free curriculum. It's a nonprofit, and you, again, in a short time, have built up many high impact partners across the country. I want to come back to your alignment of your mission and purpose with that is grounded in social justice and using AI for equity, for all. Could you go deeper with what that means?
Yeah, I think in order to leverage technology for a more equitable world, we should be empowering students with the abilities, the critical thinking skills, the technological know-how to become users of technology rather than just consumers. And especially right now, AI is often being something that's being leveraged in order to fuel consumption of data, fuel consumption of information. And when in this generative AI world, we're actually in a space where people can actually leverage AI to create in order to empower them to build new skills, in order to try something they've never tried before, or do something in the workforce that they probably didn't have the skills to do before. It actually has the ability to be a really good equalizer in access to people. This is one of the only technological revolutions that we've seen that doesn't require someone to have a lot of resources to begin with. Unlike the smartphone, when you needed hundreds of dollars to go out and buy a smartphone, or a computer where you needed thousands of dollars to go out and buy a computer, AI is something that you can leverage with just internet access. You can use a phone that you already have, use a computer that you already have. Students everywhere are engaging with AI tools, whether it's in school or out of school. It's important to talk about how students can leverage those things that they're already playing with in order to build their own capacity, or in order to build their own value. And I think it has the opportunity to be such a big equalizer. So the big picture in society is like that AI has that capacity to be a big equity tool. And then specifically in education, like there's so many, the digital divide is already such a big thing that's been highlighted, especially through COVID, as a big piece of inequity that exists across the country. Closing this digital divide requires the building of digital literacy among students. And more over the past couple of years, we've realized that AI literacy is going to be a big component of digital literacy, of media literacy, and of data literacy. And so building these skills amongst students is one way in order for us to start to address that digital divide as well.
But as you folks at aiEDU point out over and over again, that begins with the teachers, right? And so we have arguably an aging teacher force that are 10, 20 years into the profession, that some of them, and it's hard to overcome, right? That sort of, they come in with their own mental models about education and about AI literacy. How are you finding the challenge, and what strategies are you using to overcome sort of some of the resistance out there?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right in the sense that teacher capacity, teacher retention is probably still one of the largest challenges that schools are facing across the country. Oftentimes, when polled or when asked about like the biggest things that superintendents are worried about, teacher retention is always number one. Increasingly, although AI is growing to be like number 2 or number 3 on a lot of those lists, but teacher retention still remains the number one thing that a lot of leaders in education are worried about. I think AI, like many other workforces, has the capacity to professionalize the profession of teaching. It can remove a lot of burdens or a lot of timely burdens that teachers have on their plates, and basically give access to teachers, or give access of time to teachers. If they can save time on a lot of remedial tasks that AI is able to do, then teachers are able to leverage their time more for high valued and highly highly valued work where expertise amongst teachers is still super, super necessary. So what this means is, like, it potentially could mean that teachers are finding a lot more value in their work. They're finding a lot more time in order to actually connect with students one-on-one. It can lead to happier teachers that feel much more empowered in their work and feel that they can actually have a bigger impact in their work because they're able to leverage technology as a time saver tool. And then to truly, truly, truly prepare students for something that's going to happen in the future is something that all teachers want to do. And so to empower teachers with that ability is going to be super, super big.
What are some of the policy initiatives are you involved with in terms of helping systems transform?
Yeah, the policy space around AI is so quickly changing. I will say, like generative AI is still relatively new. ChatGPT is probably the thing that a lot of people first heard of when it comes to generative AI, and it's barely a year old. And within that single year, we've already seen the EU take unprecedented action. We've seen the federal government. We've seen President Biden's office put out a really kind of pretty robust executive order focused specifically on AI and building out regulations around AI. Frankly, this is one of the fastest things I've ever seen the federal government move on. I don't think people think of the federal government and regulation as things that move quickly, but in the AI world, it is moving very quickly. And so right now, what that means for superintendents and school board members who are in this world, it means that there's a lot of noise. There's so much things that are happening. We're hearing about things on the federal level, things on the state level, things at the county level. So many different guidances have been put out, so many different toolkits have been put out. And it's difficult now for a superintendent to see that entire playing field and understand what they need to do in order to actually prepare their district. And so a lot of the work that we do directly with schools is actually help them distill all of that noise, all of that information, and leverage that information in a way that's digestible. There's something that is completely unusable to teachers and to educators if we're just putting forth a couple of documents that are 50 pages long and just full of legal jargon. That's not super helpful. That's not super actionable. So how do we actually take all of these super complex recommendations, these complex toolkits, these complex policies, and distill that into usable information for educators to understand where the role that they play, for superintendents to understand the role that they play, and administrators across the district to understand the roles that they play. It's a very, very difficult task to do, and especially with a moving target like AI policies, it's going to take a lot of continued work.
So related to that, you had mentioned the importance of AI literacy. How do you define AI literacy and also your concern about the ethics of AI as well? So how does that converge?
Yeah, I think whenever people think about AI or like building AI skills, they often get stuck on this idea of like using AI tools is the only way that you can actually build AI literacy. But AI tool use is just one component of a larger breadth of what AI literacy means. Another component is what you just mentioned, like the ethical considerations. A lot of that is rooted in seeing and understanding the implications of AI, understanding that things like bias exist in all AI systems. It's very difficult to mitigate bias. And so understanding and looking at applications of technologies, being critical thinkers about those applications and understanding the ethical implications of that is a skill that should be built out among students. Other components that fall under AI literacy is just like understanding what AI is and how it works. It's funny that many people, like, there's so many different definitions of AI, so many different kinds of AI, where it comes to computer vision or machine learning or recommendation engines, whatever it might be. Understanding what all of those things mean and understanding how to recognize it in the real world is a skill. People often forget that something as simple as the autofocus on your phone's camera is a very basic form of AI. There's no huge ethical considerations for that, but it is a very basic form of AI. So just recognizing those things is going to be important.
You know, as superintendents, we're always concerned with these new technologies and the cost involved, right? We call it unfunded mandates. You had grounded this conversation earlier in the importance of AI for equity and access to AI, even though it's on a phone. ChatGPT, for example, is we're beginning to address costs associated with that. How do you where's the solution, the policy solution, where districts embrace these tools yet find themselves saddled with increasing costs for access?
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head, where the past year we've been in this world where something like ChatGPT is available, this very generic large language model that doesn't have any specified use. It's just a very generic chatbot. What we're going to see increasingly over time is that we're going to need AI that's a little bit more specific in task and a little bit more specialized. But that takes a lot of money, especially when you take into consideration the privacy considerations that I'm sure are going to come down from a lot of policy development that's going to be happening, especially when it comes to information for minors. Privacy protections paired with this need for specialized large language model use has a very big price tag. As part of the executive order from the Biden office, there was a huge call for funding to come down to public offices. So Department of Education is also in the National Science Foundation, or NSF, which makes a lot of grants across the country to schools. There's a huge call for funding for these kinds of things. In order to actually implement technology in a safe, responsible, and addressable way in education, it's going to take a lot of money. I expect that over the next year, we're going to see a lot of federal grants come down, a lot of nonprofits and a lot of funding partners that are putting money into schools, focused specifically on building their capacity. School districts are likely going to have to start building this into their own budget systems or their budget models. This might be something completely separate of an IT level of budget, but maybe it need to be pulled out into its own specialized budget. I think it's still a little bit too early to tell what that specifically looks like, but the clear indicators are that it's going to be a focus, especially going into 2024. The age of 2023 was like discovering what AI is and what it actually means. And the 2024, I hope, is going to be about actually implementing these things into practice in a safe and responsible way.
So speaking of 2024, AUHSD, in partnership with aiEDU, UCI, Digital Promise, Google, and others, are sponsoring a K12 AI Summit. Why should people, first of all, who is the summit for, and why should people go?
Frankly, this is such a new space that approaching it with a exploratory mindset, approaching it with this mindset that we are all learners in this space is an important place to start. And building a space where learners can come together and actually really deeply understand the implications of this technology in practice at school districts across the country is really important. approaching this learning not in a siloed way, like a lot of things that happen in education is, but in more of a community-based way, understanding what this district over there is doing or what this state over there is doing in the policy level. Meeting other people that are probably asking the same questions that you're asking is going to be important. And so a lot of leaders in education, this is a space in order to kind of take part in that learning, take part in that community-based innovation, and take part in understanding truly what your district needs to do in order to truly prepare teachers and students for this world where AI literacy is going to be so important.
Do you feel AI is a train that's leaving with or without us?
I think it's already gone. I think people often forget that AI as a technology is 40 years old. This isn't something that came out of nowhere when ChatGPT was put on the internet. AI is a technology that has been in the research field, in the business in the business field, in the tech field, has been around for a very, very, very long time. What's nuanced about what AI means today is how quickly it's advancing, how quickly it's getting a lot better, and how quickly people are realizing it's actually pretty dang useful. We could actually use it for a lot of really, really amazing things, and it can be implemented in a lot of different ways. So I think this is a really amazing opportunity for people to actually learn about and understand what this actually means for society. But it also means that the train has far left the station.
So the exit question here for you, Christian, is what does education and AI integration look like in 5 years?
Oh my gosh, if I had to answer that question, I'm pretty sure that'd be like the golden ticket. I can tell you what my hope is. So my hope is that teachers, starting with teachers, truly understand what it means to be AI literate. Teachers are leveraging this technology to better their practices, to advance their own learning, and in order to leverage their time more efficiently to address socio-emotional learning among students, the interpersonal connections among students. And students are building this skill to be criticizers of technology. They can understand when a red flag is being raised with the implication of technology. They can understand when a green flag is being raised with the implication of technology too, and leverage those green flag moments. I would love to see a world where schools are building these skills both amongst teachers and amongst students, because we're essentially raising the next generation of AI users and AI builders. This recent bump that we've seen in the advancement of the technology is not going to be the only bump that we're going to see. It's going to continue to advance. And as it does, I want to make sure that students are building those skills that they can learn along that way. Teachers are building those skills that they can learn along the way as AI continues to change. So probably less than 5 years, maybe a couple of years. In 5 years, that should be well established. And we're doing so across the board. We're doing so equitably, that both the schools and the teachers and the students at the front of the line and at the back of the line are having these same skills being developed.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to being on that journey with you, Christian Pinedo, and aiEDU. On behalf of all of our listeners, thank you so much.
Thank you.